Hello, everyone, and that intro ran a little longer than usual, but welcome to the Football House. I am Sam Basel. Oh, sorry, I'm having some technical issues here. All right, everybody, sorry about that. I am Sam Basel, and welcome to the Football House, House Enterprises premier college football pick show. Join alongside a crew, as usual, of Jake Zimmer and Cole Hughes. Will Tondo is obviously just gotten married, so he will not be on, but he still got his picks because he is committed. We had a fantastic in two ways. We had a fantastic week one full of excellent matchups, obviously starting off on Saturday with Ohio State, the reigning champs, taking down Texas. We'll talk about how much, maybe that loss for Texas took the wind out of their sails. And then talking about, some great games that we saw, maybe what was a better result, LSU versus Clemson or Notre Dame versus Miami. And then we'll get into some great picks for week two. But first, guys, we are now, the time to talk about how excited we are that football is back is over. But I just wanted to get, how are we feeling now fully in the swing of the 2025 season?
Yeah, interesting week one. I think we were talking about this right before we went live on the show, but a lot of, big time games for week one that you don't normally see. The slate last week was just full of a lot of, hyped games and a lot of good matchups. And, there were some surprises that we'll get into, but, it's so good to be back. And, now we're in the full swing of it.
Yeah.
I picked up where I left off, gents. And what better of a way to start for me than there's only one way up from here. 1-6. Actually, well, hopefully it doesn't get worse. All I have to do is win one game a week, and things will get better. So,
hey, none of us did too great. I think Tondo was the leader, and he was one game above 500. So.
He was 4-3, which we'll get into in a second. But yeah, tough way to start. We're still shaking off some rust from the summer. But yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you, Cole, in that. I mean, it was so refreshing to see so many highly competitive matchups in week one. And we were talking about it before the show. I mean, it seems like a lot of those, usual 40-point spreads that you'll see in week one kind of got shifted to week two, which made this card a little bit tougher to find some really close matchups. But before we get into that, I did kind of want to talk about where the results from week one affected our first in-season top 25 of the year. Guys, I just want to point out, this is the 50th top 25 from the Football House. We've been doing this since week one of 2022. I gave a full breakdown on some interesting trends in our top 25 over the years on our last week's episode. You can watch that segment on our House Enterprise YouTube channel. It was pretty bat-tastic, if I say so myself, for those who saw. But I wanted to get into this week's poll, some highlights. 3 newcomers, Florida State at 19, Oklahoma at 22, Texas Tech at 24. Kansas, Boise State, and Missouri have all dropped. Alabama, they're still on the poll, but they went from 5 all the way down to 20. And then Iowa State, after getting their second win of the season against South Dakota, they go up all the way 9 spots from 23rd to 14th. Any surprises here on this poll? I know you guys voted in it, but anything from, your fellow voters that you were kind of shocked to see?
I like, personally speaking, I was very interested, maybe not shocked, but to see where Florida State ended up, right? And I'm pulling it up to see where I put them in the interest of adding some value to this conversation here. And I don't think I ranked them. So I think I need to see some more, I don't know. Yes, Florida State, that's a big win, right? I think the AP was very happy to put them in. But, like, if anything, this is more of an indictment on Alabama for me right now than it is on, hey, look at Florida State. Like, I do think they can be good. We have a comment that, well, I'm sure will spark some discussion at some point over where can this put Florida State, right? They have cupcakes the next 3 weeks. And then they've got a great opportunity to go 5-0 if they beat Miami right now. Yeah. So yeah. And here's the comment from is that Jack maybe?
How's Alabama pick? Not feeling too good.
Yeah.
I think we were all too high. On
minding us. Jeez,
man. But like, yeah, that's kind of what shocked me, I guess, is Florida State getting 19, right? I don't disagree that they could be a top 25 team this year, but got to see how the next few weeks pan out. And then, of course, that Miami game as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, and let's talk about it. I mean, if they beat Miami, a lot can happen for Miami. A lot can happen for Florida State, up until that game. But, I mean, where does that put Florida State, like, firmly in the playoff picture for you guys?
I mean, they beat Alabama. They beat Miami. That's I think – that propels them into the top 10 for me at that point.
Yeah.
Where it goes from there, I mean, the ACC, again, very top heavy, right, this year. So it's there's a lot of questions. I don't think it puts them firmly in the top 10 or, in a playoff, discussion just because of how, again, top heavy that ACC is this year. Those top couple of teams are really good. So, yeah, I think doesn't end right then and there for Florida State. They're still going to have to win a couple marquee games to really get to where they want to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the ACC right now, after week 1, you got to say that Florida State and Miami are the 2 top teams in the ACC. And that game when they play on October 4th is going to be a big one for, the conference standings there. But, we're still so early in the season. A lot could happen. Looking at Florida State's schedule, I mean, they don't have too hard of a schedule, but they do have, Miami on the schedule. They have Florida at the end of the year. And Florida looked good coming out of the gate last week. So, that won't impact their ACC standings, but, there's still a lot of road for this Seminole team to prove themselves.
Yeah. And going into our cards from last week, like we alluded to, it was rough, guys. Not a great start for the football house in 2025. Tondo, obviously in first place, 4-3, just over 500. Cole, you broke even. I went just under 500. And Jake, man, 1-6 in week 1.
And you know what my one was? It was URI. Oh, we'll go through all those.
Yeah.
Sorry.
it was URI Moneyline versus Campbell.
FCS lock.
I knew that would happen. Yeah, I was like, I'd love to see my splits last year because I think I probably went 90% at FCS and then probably less than 40% everywhere else.
Yeah. But tough luck. But, as we're going through these, Tondo obviously struggled. Nebraska, that was a surprise pick. That happened in Arrowhead Stadium. Alabama,
let's talk
FSU.
about that. Let's talk about that because that was interesting because, these neutral site games, right? That ended up, I think, being more of an advantage for Cincinnati. I think, playing at Arrowhead, and you'd think that being closer, in geography to Nebraska that they would have showed out, but I think it actually helped Cincinnati in that game. Yeah. So it was interesting.
And then one thing, our game of the week where we really all struggled, we all picked Texas to at least cover versus Ohio State. 3 of us picked Texas to win straight up. Tondo picked them against the spread, and we were all wrong. So my question to you guys for that specific game that we all got wrong, what's the lesson that we can learn from this? Was it that we should not bet on top 5 home favorites, even though they're ranked lower than their opponent? Is it that the Longhorns are not all that they're cracked up to be? Is it the Buckeyes have a really good chance of going back-to-back, or some mix of all 3?
I think the most surprising thing from that game was Ohio State's defense, right? It was
Yep.
a low scoring game. They were able to neutralize Arch Manning throughout the majority of the game. They got Matt Patricia now as their defensive coordinator. And they were just causing fits for him. There was plenty of opportunities for Texas to, get in that game, especially late in the fourth quarter, tie the game up. And, Arch just couldn't figure it out. He couldn't make the throws. There were some, open looks there that he just couldn't get to. So I don't know if that's, early season jitters and, the amount of pressure that we talked about last week that was on him, or if it was just Ohio State's defense is legit and, led by Caleb Downs in the defensive backfield and, that they're going to be not only putting up a ton of points against teams this year, but their defense is also something to look out for. So I think a little too early to tell, but I was impressed with them on the defensive side of the ball, which was surprising.
Yeah, I'm right with you, Cole. I think combination of both of those two. We talked about the pressure that Arch faced. Look, I'm not completely out on Arch yet. I know everybody's freaking out over all the stuff they're putting his high school highlight tapes up and whatnot, right? Like I'm not there yet with the kid, right? Like, yeah, a lot of pressure. Columbus is not an easy place to have kind of your first game as the heir to the throne as a Texas Longhorn, right? So.
Yeah.
Yeah, if anything, it's like for me, where I'm at is Ohio State, front runner to go back to back, right? This is a program that if they play defense anywhere close to what they did the other day, then they're gonna be in really good shape. Also, some chatter that Ryan Day has a nipple ring. So
yeah, that was
exciting stuff.
Definitely talked about. No comment on that.
Question for you guys about Ryan Day. I was saying this on Saturday during game day when they had him on. Do you think he dyes his hair? I think definitely.
Yeah,
he's got way too jet black hair to not be doing something there. So the nipple ring would not be surprising.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty jet black. So I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, like for really anybody, like that's. But
hey, if it works, it works.
Yeah, he might be throwing a little like just for men facial hair situation in there.
That's what I'm thinking too. Yeah.
Have you guys been watching a lot of Peacemaker? This kind of feels like a conversation from Peacemaker. But the other game, Cole, I put your picks on the screen because you got it wrong. Sorry. LSU versus Clemson. LSU laid claim to the name Death Valley at least for one more year in a 17-10 win in Clemson. My question to you is, what was the game of the week? LSU beating Clemson 17-10 or Miami taking down Notre Dame 27-24?
That's a good question. I mean, two good games. I think the Miami Notre Dame, the finish there at the end was better, but LSU, hats off to them because I had Clemson winning at home and, LSU showed up again, another team where their defense just kind of suffocated Clemson all game long. They couldn't get anything going on the ground. They kind of tormented Cade Klubnik. And Garrett Nussmeier just showed, he's one of the best quarterbacks in college football. And I think there's a lot of potential for the LSU Tigers this year. And yeah, I was impressed by that. As for Miami, huge win against Notre Dame. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a huge Notre Dame fan. I'm not knocking them off yet. I think that they can rebound. But, to lose in that fashion, they're either going to go one way or the other. You got to either bounce back from that or they're going to let it, define their season, which hopefully they don't do. So,
yeah.
But yeah, two impressive wins. And I think LSU's is more impressive, but, Miami also unbelievable at the end there.
And that CJ Daniels catch, a lot of people saying catch of the year. I mean,
definitely. That thing,
hard to beat.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. What did you think of the debate? I saw some people talking about this, and I don't know. It's like one of those things, right? I can kind of agree with it, but like I don't hate that this is true. That, maybe 10, 15 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago, he would not, the way that football has progressed with, safety rules and stuff like that, like he would not be able to have the space to make a catch like that. I was just curious what your guys' thoughts was on that.
I mean, I just think the kid's a freak athlete. I mean,
Yeah.
that was one of the best catches I've ever seen. And even Kirk Herbstreit said it like, we're going to be talking about that at the end of the year in week 1, as it might be the catch of the season. So just a great play, and that's a big time moment. So,
yeah, absolutely. Guys, jump scare because I'm going to go through the slides again and we're going to see Jake's card from last week. So just. Oh no, we missed it.
Oh.
All right, let's get into our week 2 picks. Tondo, as he's celebrating his wedding from last weekend, he still had time to get his picks in. So once again, big ups to the big man, Will Tondo. He's got SMU -2.5 versus Baylor. Go Ponies. Iowa versus Iowa State. He did not pick a winner here, but he got the under at 41.5. Arizona State -6.5 versus Mississippi State. Very interesting. Arizona State going into SEC territory, possibly picking up the win. Oklahoma State +30 versus Oregon. That's going to be a very tough matchup. That just shows how good Oregon is, that they're getting 30 points on another Power 4 program. His FCS lock of the week, that is not correct. He wanted to go. He actually did not provide an FCS lock this week. He wanted to go Bryant versus UMass. We were trying to convince him to get the money line, but he just, didn't want to do it. But his FBS lock of the week, Ole Miss -9.5 versus Kentucky, and his game of the week, Oklahoma -5.5 versus Michigan. Hold off on talking about his game of the week because we're going to talk about it in a little bit. But for you guys, those top 4 picks there, what do you guys think?
Oh man, we'll get to it soon. But the SMU versus Baylor is just so tasty. Yeah, you want me to save some analysis here, Basel, or what?
Well,
do you think?
if there's anything that's not on your card, let me know what you think.
No, because I do have some takes on SMU. Yeah, that is on my card. But yeah, that's one that absolutely stands out. For stuff that's not on my card, it's interesting that +30. I feel like on paper that's too much for Oklahoma State. I did not look at that matchup. Oregon, I have not read up on them too much and kind of what their strengths are this year and how that matchup compares, but that just seems like 4 touchdowns seems a little too lopsided in a Big 12 football game versus Oregon, even if it is against the Oregon Ducks.
Yeah, I agree. So without spoiling too much of our own cards, we're gonna move on, and we're gonna go to you, Jake. How are you looking to recover from the 1-6
recovery time? We're gonna keep things simple. All right, let's do it. Iowa State, the under. Since 2018, this matchup has gone over 41.5 points, which is the over-under. It has gone over that time, or over that scoring threshold one time. And that was in 2021. It was 27-17, and it just barely squeaked through. This screams grit, man. I didn't realize that Iowa's quarterback is Mark Gronowski, not Gronkowski, not to be confused. He is not a Gronkowski family member. This is a kid that was just a bruiser at South Dakota State for the last couple of years. And talk about, the way Iowa throttled UAlbany, too. He only went 8 for 15 with 44 yards passing. And they just ran the freaking football. I mean, come on. Run, baby, run's the name of the game for Iowa. They've always had a staunch defense. If they do their job, I think they can hold Rocco Becht in Iowa State, even though he was really good for Iowa State in the that Ireland game. I think they might have a tough time. So this is a matchup that I just love the under on here.
Are you feeling like a 17-14, something in that range?
Oh, yeah. I could even see somebody sniffing like maybe it's a 21-14 situation. And I don't really know who. I guess it slightly favors Iowa State, probably. I think they're, like a 3.5 point favorite there. So, yeah, I say like, at most 21-14, 21-17, something like that. But enough cushion where they can score. It's not going to be like a 7-3 game necessarily, in my opinion. But yeah, especially since they get this one early in the year and not with the cold weather, all that good stuff. Classic Midwest game. We'll see what happens there. Okay, I got 2 picks on this SMU versus Baylor. I actually am going to have the over in this one as well. This is a steamed out over. It's 65.5, and I'm taking it. Baylor got manhandled last week, in case you did not follow. They have major issues to solve defensively. Here's the thing about SMU's defense. I don't think they're that great defensively either, though. They didn't have much to prove against East Texas A&M. Sure, they kicked the crap out of them, but both of these teams have some weapons, right? SMU's quarterback Kevin Jennings he's not only not only does he have a good arm, I should say, but he also had 261 run yards that were designed last year. They were designed for this guy, right? So he's a true run, pass, do it all quarterback, right? I think that's a major issue for a Baylor defense. Here was their stats from last week. Now they're bottom 10 nationally in run defense and tackling. They missed 23 tackles against Auburn last week. 23. That is really bad for a quarterback that can run it up the gut. He can make some moves. You combine it with SMU, they move the ball really fast. They averaged 24.5 seconds of play last year. They cut it to 20 this season. This looks like a shootout to me, right? This smells like a shootout. I think SMU wins by maybe a touchdown. So I love the spread. More importantly, I love the over. Barrage of offense in that one. Illinois Duke, I think about this in a weird way as a game with a lot to prove for Illinois in a way. This is an early challenge to keep their kind of top 20 spot. And if they want to get into the college football playoff, finally, this is a game that moves the needle, right? Duke, these are two teams that have come a long way, right? Duke had a great year last year. I think it was 9-4 the record. Illinois has been pretty good. One of them's got to make the jump. And I think it's Illinois. It comes down to defense and offensive line right now. Illinois, top echelon defense in the Big Ten, in my opinion, right? Duke's got a good quarterback, Darian Mensah. They came over from Tulane. But Illinois can neutralize it with the secondary. I feel like they have one of the best safety groups in the league. They've got Xavier Scott and Miles Scott. I don't think they're related, which is kind of crazy. And they're both really good safeties. I like the Illini here. And, they're not laying too many points, so I like them to cover. And then Clemson versus Troy. This is a get-right game for Clemson, man. Troy was a bottom-of-the-barrel Sun Belt Conference team last year. Sure, they've improved marginally, but Clemson, this is just – I think Dabo is not going to have his boys let up after last week, right? This has all the makings of a throttling. I think this could get ugly. I think they'll get out to a lead very fast. This is one of the big spreads that I am immediately drawn to just because of how the result ended last week with Clemson. So that's my 33.5 there. And then Maryland minus 16.5 against Northern Illinois. I take this specifically two reasons. Number one, what Maryland was able to do last week against FAU, right? I kind of throw FAU into the same category as Northern Illinois. Like, yeah, they had that great win last year over Notre Dame, but, Northern Illinois is not a team that, to me, has made significant improvement to kind of stay in that area. Maryland also forced 6 turnovers on FAU last week. And I think this is just another really good situation for them in College Park to knock off Northern Illinois. FCS lock of the week, Georgetown over Wagner. I was super not impressed with Wagner just in any way. It was against Kansas, but it was more of this was an embarrassment for Wagner. I don't think there was any redeeming thing about how they played last week. I would like for them to prove me wrong, because then I'll have to bet Wagner FCS for the rest of the year here. Georgetown has won their first 2 games of the season every year over the last 5 years.
Wow.
Last 4 years. Sorry. And Wagner, I think look, Georgetown's one of those teams that they start off really hot and then they run into a loaded Patriot League and then they kind of get derailed here. So, bet them while they're hot. The Georgetown Hoya Saxa. And then I take for my lock, I like Louisville. All right. I don't think there were any surprises last week with the way Louisville handled Eastern Kentucky, right? I'm super high on Louisville. I ranked them this week. They are not in the house top 25, but I strongly believe that, they're going to come out guns a-blazing here. Defense performed really well. I think this is another good offensive year for Louisville in the macro sense. They took a lot of penalties. I think they're going to clean them up, play executional football, and I think they're going to throttle James Madison here. So that's the card. I'll save the game of the week.
I got a question for you on that card. I think it's great. Illinois, you talk about how important this is for, to get the win against Duke. In a Big Ten that's now 18 teams, I mean, do these kind of middle of the pack Big Ten teams for you just is there really only shot at the playoff from year to year, just going perfect out of conference?
I don't know. I'm looking at the Big Ten standings. I don't know. I don't know, man. This is like the out of conference wins are so important here. And maybe just like what was our conversation about the Big Ten last week? It was basically that it was wide open, if I recall, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and the Big 12.
This probably, yeah, that's true. We were talking a lot about that in the Big 12. But yeah, this is probably some situation where if they win, they're on the map, right? Like I think they are in the driver's seat to go get a college football playoff spot. That's my thought on it, right? Like, yeah, and the Big Ten season's a gauntlet, but like this immediately gives them a leg up against everybody else in the Big Ten here.
I mean, I think Illinois is somewhat comparable to Indiana last year, right? If they can have that type of season, then I think that they could make the playoff. But like you said, Jake, they have to run through the gauntlet of the Big Ten. Indiana was able to do that, and they got a lot of crap last year for not really having to play anyone throughout the regular season. But they still got into the college football playoffs. So
love it. All right, Cole. Let's get into your card.
All right. All right. First pick of the week, I got SMU 2.5 versus Baylor. So Jake talked a lot about this. I think he hit the nail on the head. I think it's going to be a shootout. Obviously, the Mustangs are coming off a huge year last year, going to the ACC championship in their first year in the ACC. Getting to the college football playoff. That's a huge accomplishment for that program. I think this game, Kevin Jennings and Sawyer Robertson, the two quarterbacks, right? I think it's going to be a fun matchup to watch. Two of them both have big arms. They both can run around. Both offenses can move the ball quick. So I think that's a fun matchup to watch this week. Robertson last week, even though they lost to Auburn and they got beat up pretty bad, he still threw for over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns despite the loss. So, I mean, you're doing that against an SEC defense. What are you going to do against SMU? As Jake mentioned, they don't have that great of a defense. I don't think either team does. So I expect a lot of points. Think it's going to be a shootout, but I'm going to give SMU the edge at home. I think Rhett Lashley, their coach, he's a great, offensive-minded guy. I think he's just going to outcoach Dave Aranda, and I think the Mustangs get the win there. So taking the Ponies against Baylor. Pitt, 21.5 against Central Michigan. Pitt, I know they played Duquesne last week, but man, did they look good. Over 460 yards of offense for the Panthers. I think just the talent level is way too high. I think Pittsburgh's got way more depth. I think they got way more athletes than Central Michigan. This was a team last year that started out 7-0, Pittsburgh Panthers, and then they dropped their last 6 games to finish 7-6. And I think a big part of that was, Eli Holstein, their quarterback. He had several injuries towards the end of the year, and they kind of just fell off. But there was a lot of potential for them, halfway through the year last year. So if he can stay healthy, I think, he's capable of running that offense, putting a lot of points up. I think Pitt could be a surprising team in the ACC to watch this year. So I'm going to take Pitt, about 3 touchdowns or more against Central Michigan. Oklahoma State and Oregon, we talked a little bit about the spread here. It's a big spread in favor of Oregon, rightfully so. Oklahoma State, historically under Mike Gundy, they've been a great program, but, last year, really tough year for them. They were 3-9, just really couldn't get anything going. I think they're looking to have a bounce back year this year. Mike Gundy's known for his offense in the Big 12 historically. I saw a stat earlier today from 2010 through last season, 2024, the Oklahoma State Cowboys have averaged 36.5 points per game, which is number 5 in the FBS during that time frame, and an average of 466 yards of total offense, which is number 7 in all of FBS. So they've been ranked in the top 10 nationally in scoring offense 6 times during Mike Gundy's long tenure there. So, historically, this is a program that's capable of putting up a lot of points. We know what Oregon is capable of offensively. They put up 59 points last week against Montana State like it was nothing. Granted, it was Montana State, but they can do that against, top tier programs as well. And Dante Moore, their new quarterback, he's an athlete. So also Dan Lanning and Mike Gundy have been chirping at each other all week. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but they've been going back and forth. So I think this is going to be a high scoring game. I think Oregon still wins in, a good manner, but I think that Oklahoma State's capable of putting up some points, and I think it'll be a high scoring game. So I'm taking the over there.
How confident would you be in taking the Oregon spread?
30's a lot.
That's the point, man. That's a little too much, I think.
I think it's too much. I think they could win by like 21, but 30, I think that's a lot. I think Oklahoma State puts up enough points to cover that. So that's why I took the over and didn't take the spread, but we'll see what happens. Liberty minus 6.5 versus Jacksonville State. Liberty looked solid last week. They played Maine. Their quarterback, Ethan Vasco, he threw for 3 touchdowns, ran for 1, shows that he can do both. He's got a lot of talent. That's evident there. The one thing that was a little worrisome for Liberty, for me, they did let up 184 rushing yards on the ground, which is a bit concerning week 1 against the University of Maine. I look for Jack State to kind of capitalize on that. They have junior running back Cam Cook, who's a transfer from TCU. He's a pretty good athlete. I think they're going to try and get him going early. So I think it's all going to depend on their defense. If Liberty can kind of stop the run game and, stop that attack, then I think they'll be able to cover there. So taking them minus 6.5. My FCS lock of the week, I'm going to take UNH money line against Holy Cross. They're at home. Holy Cross actually played Northern Illinois last week, and they only lost by 2 points. So that's actually pretty surprising for Holy Cross. And, look, last year they were a pretty solid team. Their record didn't really reflect it. They were 500, 6-6, I believe, but they were right at the top of the Patriot League within their conference with Lehigh. So, the Wildcats beat them by 1 point last year on the road at Holy Cross. I think this year's matchup is going to be very similar. I think it's going to be a tight game, but I like the Wildcats to squeak out another win at home this year against the Crusaders. So FBS lock, we talked a little bit about this. Arizona State, Mississippi State. I love Arizona State. I love Kenny Dillingham. I love what he's been able to do with that program. They had a great year last year, and I think they're going to build upon that. Their quarterback, Sam Levitt, another dual threat guy, can throw the ball, can run around. He definitely has a new favorite target in Jordan Tyson. Last week, Jordan Tyson racked up 12 receptions, 141 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns against Northern Arizona. So, I think Levitt and Tyson, between those two, they'll be able to cover here. And Mississippi State is 5-13 versus ranked opponents since 2021. So, yes, they are an SEC team, but and they are at home. But I just think Arizona State's too good. So I'm going to take the Sun Devils there.
What's up with I want to go back to SMU Baylor too. Like, what's up with Dave Aranda? Right? Is there any? I feel like everybody was hook, line, sinker for him when he left LSU to go take that job, and now he's 31-31. I just looked it up. I feel like Baylor fans are getting a little frustrated. Just so streaky over the years. They had a good year at 8-5 last year, but when does his seat get hot if it's not hot already?
Well, yeah, and it's funny because before Dave Aranda, I believe their head coach was Art Briles, right? and that was when like RG3 was there. And those were good teams, right? Those were teams that won, 10, 11 games consistently. And then there was some controversy surrounding Art Briles that, forced him kind of out the door. This is 7 or 8 years ago, but Dave Aranda, I think he's just one of those classic examples of, great coordinator, was at, a big time school under, a great head coach. And, now he's gotten the opportunity to lead a team, but he's just been mediocre. So, I mean, it's been like that in Waco for the last couple of years. So I don't know how short his leash is, but, you got to think like where they were a decade ago and where they are now, they've definitely regressed. So, how long do they keep him around and at the helm there?
And actually, I just looked it up. In between them was Matt Rule. People forget
Oh,
that
yeah,
was
that's
how
right.
he I certainly forgot that's how he got the Panthers job.
That's right. He went from Temple to Baylor, and then he went to the NFL, right?
Yeah, it's crazy stuff. So this
Totally
is a
forgot
team
all about
that, this is a program that has had really high expectations over the years, to your point. And
I mean, that even strengthens the argument, right? You had Matt Rule come
definitely
in after Briles and did well there, well enough to get looked at by an NFL franchise. And, ever since then, they kind of have just plateaued. So,
yeah.
Absolutely.
So I thought, like, I don't know when it changes for Baylor, right? And not that something needs to change necessarily, but like they got Jackson Arnold had his way with him the other night, so it's not a great look when they were in the driver's seat at no point in that game. And yeah, it was close to the beginning a little bit, but Auburn just completely throttled them.
But again, we talked about this last week. Like this year, the Big 12 is wide open, right? What's stopping Baylor from, being one of those teams that you're talking about at the end of the year in the Big 12? But do they get over the hump,
Yeah, very tough Big 12 this year, very wide open, but I mean, you have to use your window when you can. And if Baylor drops this to SMU, then it doesn't really feel like they'll be able to pick it back up once their main conference games start. Great card, Cole. Let's get into my picks for this week. I'm riding Iowa State -3.5 versus Iowa. Iowa State. One thing I really love about this Cyclones team that I feel like we haven't touched on yet, the dual threat offense that they've got. I mean, they have such a fantastic receiving core. They have two really good tight ends in Gabe Burkle and Benjamin Brahmer. I mean, they have a really deep, set of guys at that position. And then they also really love to pound the running game. I mean, they can really adjust to anything that a defense throws at them on, both ways to move the ball. Then I've got Tulane -10.5 versus South Alabama. I know it's dumb to call games must win in week 2 of a season, but by beating Northwestern last week, Tulane immediately shot themselves into the playoff picture as the group of 5, the 5th best conference champion. They've got games coming up against Duke, and then they've got games. They needed a win against Duke, a win against South Alabama before they go to Ole Miss on the 20th. Like, you really need to be 3-0 before a game like that if you want to be a group of 5 team ready for the playoffs. And then even against Ole Miss, even if they lose, they still need to put up a solid performance. I've got Kansas +6.5 versus Missouri in the border showdown. Jalen Daniels, really interesting guy to keep your eye on in the Big 12. He's got 7 touchdowns through the air this season. That's very, very impressive. Hawaii -6.5 versus Sam Houston. Sam Houston, tough start to their season, and now they got to go all the way to Hawaii to play that game. That's going to be a midnight Eastern kickoff time there. So I've got the Rainbow Warriors winning that by at least 6.5 points. Then I've got UNLV +2.5 versus UCLA. Again, just like Tulane, UNLV cannot take their foot off the gas as a group of 5 team looking to make the college football playoff. UCLA is struggling. The Rebels have to smell blood in the water. They have to attack, and they have to cover by at least 2.5 points. My FCS lock, I've got Lehigh moneyline versus Sacred Heart. Lehigh, obviously, back really in the competitive picture in the Patriot League this year. look for Hayden Johnson. He had 135 yards through the air for 2 touchdowns in a 21-14 win over Richmond. And Lehigh gave up a lot of passing yards versus Stonehill last week. They gave up 212. Johnson, he also threw some interceptions. He threw 2 picks, I believe. But this defense is clearly enough to account for any big mistakes that the offense could make. So take Lehigh over Sacred Heart. And then my FBS lock of the week, we've already talked about it. Arizona State -6.5 versus Mississippi State. Get a good win, beat an SEC team. Obviously, Mississippi State, not the cream of the crop of the SEC in these recent years, but it's still a road win against a really strong conference team, or a team in a really strong conference. So take Arizona State -6.5.
I think that UNLV UCLA game is going to be a really fun one to watch.
Yeah.
I watched the UNLV game last week against Sam Houston. I think they played, and week 1 they came out and they didn't look too great when they played Idaho State, but last week they bounced back, and I think Dan Mullen being there, it's been a while since he's been on the sideline, but I think he's going to do good things for that program, and if they could beat UCLA and the Bruins this week, I think that's a huge win for them.
Absolutely. And then before we get into our game of the week, I did kind of want to talk about some other great football stuff that's happening on House Enterprise. So if our viewers watching right now will indulge me, I'd love to show you some of the other offerings that we've got on the website. As you can see, this is the homepage for house-enterprise.com, the home for the Football House, some of our great NFL content, some great college basketball content in another month. It's pretty much the home for all of our fantastic contributors to post their stuff. Obviously, you can see on the blog some of our latest posts. Michael DeRosa cranking away at some Big East coverage, even deep into the offseason. But in terms of our college football stuff, Ohm Brown took some time to preview his entire thoughts on the college football playoff. I'm not going to spoil it because I want you to go check it out and read the article. But he breaks down all the teams that he thinks will make it, their seed, and the result of every single game all the way to the national championship game. We are a day away from the beginning of the 2025 NFL season. So Jordan Lauby and I, for the past 3 weeks, have been breaking down every single team, every single division in video and audio podcast form. If you go to our Team Hub on the House Enterprise blog, you can see every single episode broken out by division, and then we've got individual segments for every single team from those episodes. You can also find that on our House Enterprise YouTube channel, where we've got them in a playlist, one playlist for all 32 teams, and then one playlist for all 8 divisions. And then earlier this week, we did an addendum pod, because obviously when we started this 3 weeks ago, there were a lot of big moves that happened from the start to this week, most notably the Micah Parsons trade, the Brian Robinson trade, which were not covered in our initial NFC East preview. So we did take some time at the end to talk about, any sort of corrections or major moments. And we also responded to a lot of viewer comments, which is something that we really find super important at House Enterprise. So if you're watching right now and you've got any questions about college football, or if you want to just roast us for when we have a pretty bad week, like Daniel here, Daniel's a big Florida State fan. He, wanted to kind of put us on blast for taking Alabama over the Seminoles. So if you want to do that, please keep watching our live streams and hit us with some comments, because we'd love to hear what college football fans that watch House Enterprise have to say, and love to keep this conversation as open as possible. But with that, let's get into our game of the week, and it is a fantastic one. We have gotten really blessed with 2 fantastic weeks to start off this college football season, and this week we are sticking with another Big Ten versus SEC matchup, and that is as the Michigan Wolverines head to Norman to take on Oklahoma. The Wolverines are coming off a 34-17 win over New Mexico, while Oklahoma took down Illinois State 35-3 last week. Oklahoma, obviously the home team, they're a 6.5-point favorite. one thing I wanted to talk about before we get into the actual game, obviously one of the big narratives for Michigan is that they were finally handed the punishment for, a lot of the strategy stealing scandal, the Connor Stallions situation. Obviously not pretty old news, but this is the first time we've really been able to talk about it on the Football House. So just to recap for anybody that's not familiar, this is via Pete Thamel of ESPN. The punishment includes a 3-game suspension for Coach Sharon Moore, which, those are going to be kind of spread out. They're going to be served in weeks 3 and 4 this season against Central Michigan and at Nebraska. And then he's going to miss the first week of the 2026 season, which is when they play Western Michigan in Germany. There is an 8-year show cause penalty for Stallions, an additional 10-year show cause for former head coach Jim Harbaugh, and a fine that's projected to be around $30 million for the school. No wins vacated, no, real outstanding punishments. Obviously, Coach Moore has a little bit of flexibility in which 3 games he was actually suspended for. So my question for you, both of you guys, is do we feel like, was this punishment a little too light for Michigan? Was it a little too heavy for what was going on? Or do you feel like it kind of struck a fair balance for the violations that the Wolverines committed?
I think, if we're talking historically, people would probably say it's a little light. But now in the new era of college football with all the NIL and, all that money, $30 million is a lot. And I think that's kind of what the NCAA was trying to get at, trying to hurt them in their pockets, because that's where it's going to hurt them the most moving forward. But, still, I think at the end of the day, it's a slap on the wrist. I mean, their coach, Sharon Moore, misses 3 games, games that don't matter really. I don't think it's too much of a big thing. And then the whole thing with Stallions and Harbaugh, that only comes into effect if they try to come back, right? So, they're never going to be associated with the Michigan program again. That's really just a punishment for them. So I think Michigan makes out, and, look, at the end of the day, they still won the national championship. So I don't think they care.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't even have to, it doesn't even have to be like a Louisville thing, right? With the 2013 basketball national championship where it's like, they can't display the banner. It's like, yeah, the NCAA is still recognizing that championship. So,
right.
Job finished. Jake, any thoughts on that?
No, nothing. I would say a little light, but again, yes, Sharon Moore was in the program, right? Was he complicit in all this? Did he? That might be an inherently different question than if he coordinated it, right? Like, I do think the self-imposition that Michigan gave him went a long way in the committee, in their favor to the committee, right? They have some ground to stand on and say, hey, well, we took him off, right? We even if it was weeks 3 and 4 or whatever, right? So I don't know. I think they kind of dodged a good chunk of the actual punishment, if you will. I'm kind of with Cole and you guys on that, but at the same time, I also see it is kind of objectively stupid that Sharon Moore's got to serve the suspension for something that he wasn't the head coach for at the time, right? Was he benefiting from it? Yeah, he was, right? And that's the burden you accept when you lead that program. It's okay, I'm now accountable for its past successes or failures, all that stuff. I do think so. I think both of those can be true.
Yeah, absolutely.
It would be interesting, though. I'm not saying that anyone wants this to happen, but if this were to happen again with another program, how they would respond, the NCAA, would they really put the hammer down on, another program? Or because the precedent that this kind of sets is all right, so what, So it's
as long as you self-impose your coach and, they didn't benefit that much. It's
yeah, I don't think it really sets a great precedent to prevent it, but I would wonder if it were to happen again, would they, go all out, and would the punishment be different?
I don't think you can. I really don't think you can after what we've seen. And Is that a problem? I don't know. Like, this is just such a weird situation because when you determine that this was not really enough to vacate wins or do anything like that, because I feel like that's kind of the ultimate punishment, right? In college football is to, or any college sports, it's like, all right, fine, like you got those off, but those wins don't count. And even when those wins don't count, I mean, even that fan base will always be like, well, no, we did actually win those games. So it's so hard to enforce. So I don't really see the NCAA laying out, a harsher punishment because the precedent's been set.
Yeah.
But do they codify this in the rules then, right? Do they make a Stallions rule, which I just looked because I wasn't aware that they had done anything, and they haven't changed any of the rules, right? Now that what they have done is set a precedence, I agree. But part of me thinks that all signs are pointing to they explicitly codify this in some sort of bylaw or constitution or whatever the hell the NCAA has, right? I think that would make sense so that they don't, because this is just like arbitrators and lawyers trying to determine if they actually broke rules, right? And there was just way too much. Like, Michigan has a lot to stand on because they're saying, hey, they're interpreting all this incorrectly, right? And this is too harsh a punishment because we avoided XYZ, and then it's just one lawyer pointing at another, right? So it's,
I mean, it's
like,
very.
You have to think Charlie Baker and the crew act on this. Sorry, Cole, go ahead.
It's very comparable, I think, to like the whole scandals with the Patriots back in the day, right? Whether it's Spygate or Deflategate or whatever. It's like a lot of it is hearsay. You don't really know what happened. You don't get the details. Like, everyone that roots against Michigan's going to say Michigan's cheaters. That's the only reason they won. Is that true? I don't think so. I mean, I think Michigan was a talented team. We all know the Patriots would have won those Super Bowls regardless. So, that's what I'm getting at. But, there's a lot of similarities there.
If you ask the Sam Basel so as a lifelong Jets fan, if you ask the Sam Basel that was, existing at the time that the Deflategate stuff was going on, and you asked me to compare it to this, and you compared it to that, I'd probably be like, yeah, strip Michigan of everything. Tear the stadium down. But I do kind of
sound like you're from Ohio, buddy.
Yeah, I'd still feel strongly about some New England Patriots stuff. I think the NCAA, while it was light, I felt like they might have just maybe made the right move and just let's just move on. But let's move on from talking about this scandal and let's talk about the actual game that Michigan is playing this week against Oklahoma. A very tough matchup, a continuing installment of the saga between the SEC and the Big Ten that it's never going to end. And it never should because these games are great. And two teams that are looking to kind of make a push for the playoffs this year. For me, my thoughts on this game, the first couple weeks of the season, especially this game, I mean, again, it comes down to experience. Obviously, Sharon Moore, great coach, but you got Bryce Underwood. He had, 250 yards last week for a touchdown against New Mexico. But I think this Brent Venables defense is really going to hammer Michigan. And I think Oklahoma's going to get the win here and cover 5.5. Jake, what are your thoughts? How's this game going to go down?
Well, see, like, I don't know. I admit this, and the only reason there's two reasons I wanted to take Michigan. First, because I didn't want to curse you all after I don't want to bring you all down with me. So you're welcome in advance. No, I think it's just a bigger line than I would have expected. Right? Like, yeah, I think there's some legit questions about both of these groups. Like, John Mateer had a really good game last week, and I am familiar with John Mateer's work because of the quarterback battle that he got into with former Bryant quarterback Zevi Eckhouse last year at Washington State, and he won that one. So, and Zevi Eckhouse lost another quarterback battle this year at the same school, by the way. So, R.I.P. Sorry, Zevi. Last 2 years of your career are on the bench. So whatever. But yeah, I think Mateer played really well last week, right? He still got questions, right? I don't know how he's gonna play in a very hostile environment like this, and it's only going to get worse in a very crowded, SEC this year, obviously, as well. For me, it was about, did Bryce Underwood show us enough last week? And I think he did, right? I think he had a pretty good game. He was 21 for 31. He threw over 200 yards, right? It was, and this is a situation that Michigan got off to a really hot start and they never looked back, right? And I don't expect the same to happen. They might not even win this game, right? But I do think this is going to be a little closer than the analytics are saying on this. Well, actually, the analytics back me up on this, right? They're saying, it's going to be a one possession game, right? Michigan may even have a shot to win. I don't really know. And I do think Venables is going to bring the heat, right? Especially against quarterbacks. That's kind of his thing. So here's the thing. The redeeming quality for Michigan is their run game, right? So if they run the football really well, they run it like they've done the last 3-4 years, then this game is closer than maybe the average fan thinks it is. So that's why I'm feeling pretty good about the Michigan 5.5 here.
Yeah. Cole, I mean, look, I think that's going to be the story, right? Basically, Venables' defensive schemes versus Underwood's solid play. I mean, so if you had to pick in that matchup, who you got?
Yeah, I'm taking Oklahoma. I mean, I like that they're at home. They have the home field advantage. You guys covered pretty much all the talking points here, but I think when it comes down to it, you have John Mateer coming over from Washington State. If history tells us anything, when quarterbacks transfer to Oklahoma, a lot of them are pretty successful once they go there. You had Kyler Murray, you had Baker, you had Jalen Hurts. So if history tells us anything, I think that John Mateer is going to have a big year at Oklahoma for the Sooners. He threw for over 3,000 yards last year. He threw for just under 400 last week. He's just got a lot more experience than Bryce Underwood does. And, we talked a lot last week about Arch Manning and all the hype surrounding him. But I think just underneath Arch is Bryce Underwood, right? There's been a lot of hype for Bryce Underwood, going to Michigan. And yeah, he played pretty well last week, but, they played a no-name school, right? Now he's got to go to Norman, Oklahoma, face Oklahoma's defense. So, is he going to live up to that task? I don't know. We'll see. But not seeing enough game film on him yet, I'm taking Oklahoma. And I think Jake hit the nail on the head. I think the deciding factor, the X factor in this game is Michigan's run game, right? The last couple of years, they've had great guys in the backfield that have been able to just change the momentum of games and really allow Michigan to be dominant on the offensive side of the ball. And, they have a guy this year that, follows in line with that, and Justice Haynes. He ran for 159 yards last week, 3 rushing touchdowns. I mean, he's a dude, right? So is Oklahoma's defense able to stop him? I think if they are, then they cover that spread. But I think if they let him get going and Bryce Underwood starts to, be able to manage the game, and you have the ground game there as well to help him out, then maybe it is closer. But from what I'm seeing right now heading into this game, I'm taking the Sooners.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one thing that we talked about last week with Ohio State versus Texas, very different for them because they were both top 5 teams heading into the season. But one thing about this new 12-team playoff is the fact that you can take a loss like this and kind of work your way back into the picture, and even let a loss like this kind of look better for your resume if you can keep it close and then finish out your season strong. So I got Michigan's schedule up here. I've got Oklahoma's schedule up here. After this game, Michigan's got Central Michigan, Nebraska, Wisconsin, USC. Obviously, Coach Moore's not going to be at those games for Central Michigan and Nebraska. And then Oklahoma has got Temple, Auburn, Kent State, Texas. If I can go a little later into Oklahoma's schedule too, they've got a gauntlet through the SEC. So it's Texas, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Bama, Missouri, LSU to finish out the season.
Wow.
I mean,
Jesus Christ.
I mean, that just adds for me with Oklahoma this week then, because this is a must-win game for them if they have to go through that schedule in the SEC for the rest of the year. I mean, if they lose against Michigan at home and then have to go through that, that's tough.
And it feels.
And then
it
if they
feels
win, do they go to the top of the do they become the favorite? That's the crazy part in the SEC. It's like, do they give Texas a run for their money? It's insane.
Yeah, I mean, that game every year is usually a good game. I know there's a couple outliers there where there's been blowouts, but the Red River rivalry is always a good matchup. So, and, if Texas plays the way they did last week, then, maybe it is Oklahoma's year. We'll see. But
yeah, so looks like most of us are riding with Oklahoma here. Let's see. So I've got Oklahoma -5.5. Cole, you've got Oklahoma -5.5. Jake, you've got Michigan +5.5. And Tondo is riding Oklahoma -5.5. So big one for the Sooners. Could be huge for Michigan here. Very exciting matchup in week 2 and plenty of other great games all throughout this next couple days. Obviously, I think the slate this week is just Friday, Saturday, which I like the, week 1, 5 days in a row of college football, but I think it can be a little bit more fun to get a full concentrated slate of Friday and Saturday. So that's going to wrap it up for the Football House. As I mentioned
before we leave, 2 shout outs from week 1 of college football. First and foremost, Lee Corso, legend. Hats off to him on an outstanding career. Sad to see him go because he's been, a part of college football our entire lives. And even beforehand, I think he changed the game, kind of laid the foundation for us to do this type of stuff. So hats off to him, hell of a career, and just want to give him a shout out for all of his contributions. And then also Tarleton State, big win against Army last week, FCS.
Wow.
Yes.
FCS. So
actually, you know what? Can I give a shout out as well?
Yeah.
I would like to give a shout out to Haynes King of Georgia Tech. I thought he had a fantastic game, and you can quote me on this. You can quote me on this. Last week, I said Haynes King would be a huge difference maker in this game against Colorado. His experience would be the difference maker. Not the best game through the air, but he had 156 yards and 3 touchdowns all on the ground. So shout out to Haynes King.
Yeah, that was wild. Are we going to talk about Bill Belichick first, too?
We could.
Before we close. I mean, what the hell? That was horrible. North Carolina was back for like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Not even.
I mean, the worst part about it was you start the game 7-0, and then, TCU just goes unanswered for 41 after that. It just wasn't even a fun game to watch. I will say that Josh Hoover, TCU's quarterback, I think he's one of the best quarterbacks
definitely
in college football. He's really talented. And I think, TCU, they've had plenty of success last couple of years. They made the national championship a couple of years ago. I think they're going to be a good program this year. Another team to look at the Big 12. But, yeah, not a hot start for Bill. But we'll see where the Tar Heels end up.
Well, let's see where they can kind of pick it up.
Go ahead.
So they got Charlotte, they got Richmond, UCF, and then Clemson at home.
Well, you would think they win those 3 games leading up to Clemson, which puts them at 3-1, right? And then if they can, take that game at home at Chapel Hill, then, maybe we flip the script and we say Bill's on something, but I don't know. We'll see. Didn't look too good for a defensive guy. His defense didn't look too hot. But I will say another part of it is too, when he came in with Mike Lombardi as the GM taking over that program, they have I think 70 new guys, part of the transfer portal there. So, I mean, that's part of it too, right? You get all these new faces in the room. It's going to take some time to put it together, but, you can't get smacked around by TCU week 1 like that.
Yeah.
You know what my favorite part of that game was when they put the mic on Kirk Herbstreit's dog and he started calling the game. He was like huffing and puffing into the mic.
Peter, the best.
That's pretty sad that was the most entertaining part of a college football game on ESPN.
It gets to that point, man. It's like watching like some peak Gary, Keith, and Ron on SNY for any of my Mets fans out there
baby.
during the 2012, 2013 seasons. It's just like, you're basically listening to a podcast at that point with sports happening on the screen.
And that's before podcasts were cool too.
Yeah. And now look at us. We're cool. Podcast,
sure,
cool. All right. With that, I think we'll wrap it up for week 2 of the Football House on House Enterprise. As I said, we are just in full throttle football mode on the House Enterprise blog. So make sure you see on the socials you see below, house-enterprise.com. You can see all of our great stuff for college football, for the NFL, for whatever else, maybe some Canadian football, probably not, but a lot of really great stuff on the way from the Football House crew. So for Cole Hughes, Jake Zimmer, and Will Tondo, wherever he is right now, I'm Sam Basel. This has been the Football House Show, and we'll see you guys next time.